For the March 23rd meeting of the Clayton Planning Board. And at this time, we'd ask staff if they would do a roll call for us, please.
Thank you, Chair. I got Chair Dupree.
Here.
Vice Chair Applewhite. Here. Board Member Gleason.
Here.
Board Member Sarowski.
Here.
Board Member Bland.
Here.
Board Member Carter is excused. Board Member Hooker. Board Member Hall. Here. Board Member McCurney. And Board Member Durham. So we do have a quorum, sir. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Before we get started this evening, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Item 2 on the agenda this evening is the Planning Board elections for the Planning Board Chair and Vice Chair. So at this time, I would accept nominations for the Board Chair.
I'd like to nominate Dupree.
That was stereo. One of you need.
I nominate Jody Dupree to continue as our board chair for 2026.
We have a nomination. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Do we have other nominations? All right. Hearing none, we will vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And now we will accept nominations for the Planning Board Vice Chair.
All right, I'll do it. I'm going to nominate Derek Applewhite.
I have a nomination for Derek Applewhite to continue as Vice Chair. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other nominations? Hearing none, I will entertain a vote on this motion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Applewhite.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you all very much for that. At this point, we are in item 3, adjustment of the agenda. Conrad, any adjustment of the agenda this evening?
There are no adjustments to the agenda, sir.
All right. So in order for our, some people say we don't have to do this, but we do. In order for it to be a binding adjustment or a binding agenda, we have to have a motion to approve the agenda as it sits. Have a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion we accept the minutes.
We're not in the minutes yet.
The agenda as written. I'm sorry, the agenda as written.
All right. And we have a second.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Now we're at item 4, the approval of the minutes. I trust that you've had an opportunity to read the minutes from our meeting last month. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes? Or are there any corrections or amendments to those minutes that anyone saw? Motion to approve from anyone?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Member Hooker with a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Next on the agenda this evening, item 5 is the public meeting. This is the 2024-138 CZM Winston Point 3H conditional rezoning type 3. And we have someone who needs to speak at this point. Ms. Bland? Okay. Thank you very much. Ms. Bland has recused herself from this portion of the meeting this evening. This time we'll turn it over to staff.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Board. Robert Tate, Senior Planner with the town. Tonight before you is Project 2024-138 CZM, the Winston Point 3H Type 3 conditional rezoning, a major modification to an approved master plan. This is a request to rezone the subject parcel from the residential plan district to the residential conditional zoning district. The property is approximately 11.6 acres in size and is situated along the southerly side of Winston Road and east of Red Jasper Way. Currently, the site is vacant and undeveloped. So many of you may remember this item. This appeared before you back in November of last year. This was brought back to staff review and the technical review committee to consider the discussions that was held during that meeting. Since November, the applicant has provided a complete new set of zoning conditions, a new concept plan, and a conditions of approval justification document that kind of outlines those conditions. So I'll go through those after I kind of get into the meat and potatoes. So first, we're going to look at the zoning map. So the change from the PDR zoning to the CZR. Next, going to talk about the consistency with town policy. So this request is inconsistent with the future land use map designation of low density residential. This designation envisions a gross residential density of about 3 units per acre. The request tonight would allow somewhere between 7 and 7.5 units per acre, which would be inconsistent with the recommendation and the future land use map. This request is, however, a similar development pattern that is within the Winston Point community today. And also there is some policy north along Winston Road that would allow residential gross density of 10 units per acre. So with those surrounding patterns and future land use designation, staff is going to be recommending approval for this request, but I'll get into that a little further in the presentation. So taking a look at the concept plan that the applicant has provided, if you're looking at the screen, the light gray areas, so in this general area, around here and around here, are the building envelopes for the townhome units. And for your reference, Winston Road is situated here, left of the plan, and Red Jasper Way is here, kind of south of the plan. And the darker gray area just shows the street grid connection within the site and how it will receive access. And then some other features on this concept plan shown is the kind of detention pond, abutting Red Jasper and the townhome development, and then the common open spaces for the HOA. So here are the conditions of approval. The next couple of slides will go over them. I will note that these first 4 are kind of our typical and standard Town of Clayton conditions of approval, so I won't go too much into detail with those. This 5th condition is a slight change in what our typical conditions of approval would include, but largely without having to go through each word here tonight. This would essentially establish a site-specific vesting plan for this project. The 6th and 7th condition are, again, some typical conditions of approval. The 8th condition would establish a maximum number of residential units on the property to not exceed 87 dwelling units. Condition number 9 would prohibit any new driveways, access points, or entrances directly from Winston Road. And then the 10th and final condition is a deviation from the UDO standards related to parking. This would allow parking in garages and within driveways for the attached or the attached single family dwelling building type. And then this would also allow a reduction in the required guest visitor parking spaces. So they would be required 22, and they are looking to have at least 11 installed on this site. So a reduction of 11 or half. So quickly going over your considerations for tonight. So should this be approved by town council, the conditions of approval will be tied with the land along with the concept plan. Also, because this request is inconsistent with the future land use map, town council will also make a motion in the ordinance to amend the future land use map to an appropriate designation. And tonight you are welcome to make a recommendation as well to town council. So like I mentioned earlier, staff is recommending approval, provided that it is inconsistent with the 2045 comprehensive growth plan, but that it would also be a similar development pattern than that's existing today, and that's also envisioned in the surrounding area. So here are your menu of motion options for you to consider. Staff recommendation is provided in the red. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions you may have before you hear from the applicant.
Have any questions of staff?
Can I ask 2 questions about the plan, or do we want to wait to ask those questions of the applicant?
It's up to you. If you would like to wait to hear what they have to say.
I'll wait.
It's fine.
I have one quick question about condition number 6, and that's a new condition, correct?
Condition number 6
Excuse me, it's condition number 5.
That's right. Condition number 5 is a new condition.
To the extent possible, could you just walk through this in a little bit more detail? I want to make sure that I'm fully understanding what the condition is.
I may defer to either the planning director or town attorney. I know we're still trying to work through condition language, exactly what this looks like. But from our understanding is that this would basically tie a site-specific vesting plan to the site for this project so that that they basically have, you know, the entitlement and the project itself established via this zoning condition.
Okay. I guess it may be helpful to know what the desire, whether on behalf of the town or the applicant, was to include this condition.
I think maybe the applicant can help provide some clarity. And if you're not too sure, I think we can maybe also respond after that.
That's fine. And then one other question on the next page, I believe it's the parking condition. Was this a new condition as well?
That's right. This is a new condition as well.
Okay. And primarily, if I'm asking the question, this was designed in a way to match so that the parking matched the previous phases.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? All right, at this time then we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Toby Coleman. I am an attorney with Smith Anderson. I am here on behalf of the applicant, D.R. Horton. With me tonight, we've got our team who you saw back in December, Patty Harrell Hilburn with D.R. Horton, Preston Royster with Thomas and Hutton. He's going to be making the bulk of this presentation, and Nate Bachwin with Matt McAdams. He's the traffic engineer. We'll be talking to you about the traffic. As I mentioned, and as Robert mentioned, this is a case that you all heard back in December, and it's a bit of an unusual case. I think even, you know, sort of the notation that staff had on the top that it's a conditional zoning and a master plan amendment, which is an unusual case, and it's, I think, worth noting that this was a case where we were literally asked to sort of balance both things. So we're back here because back in December, and I watched the meeting, rewatched the December meeting last night just to make sure that I got this right. A number of you expressed concern that that we were presenting this as sort of a blank in the master plan, and you wanted to see the concept plan that's typically required of a conditional rezoning. So we're coming to you tonight with that, and we're going to actually provide even a little bit more detail when Preston gets up here. But I want to note that even though this is being sort of treated as a rezoning of the 11 acres, when we came into staff to do this, we were asked to sort of make sure to analyze this for the overall master plan. So when we were looking at overall sort of recreation area and all those other requirements, we had to look, Preston and his team had to look at the entire master plan. And when you look at the entire master plan, you know, as staff has pointed out, we don't meet the future land use map requirements for low density with this particular site, the 11-acre site. However, if you were to look at the entire master plan, we'd be at about 1.5 units per acre. And even if you said, we're going to look south of Winston, just look at the area south of Winston, we'd be less than 3 units an acre. Again, just noting that because I think it's relevant. The other thing is that this is a unique transition area. Again, Preston will talk a little bit more about this, but you know, the area north of Winston, directly across the street from this parcel, became a school. But when the master plan was approved about 25 years ago, that was going to be a commercial area. And that's why when you look at the future land use map, it talks about being a neighborhood center. To the east is a mobile home park. So this is really sort of a transitional area. It's a little transitional area within this larger development. And that's why we think that the townhomes are appropriate here. You know, we realize and we heard the concerns from Commissioner Applewhite and others that, you know, this is an area where you see a lot of lower density housing, but both within this overall master plan and uniquely within this sort of micro area, This makes sense just because of, you've got denser uses across the street and you've got mobile home parks next door. So you've already got some transitioning going on to traditional single family uses. Finally, I do want to just note really quickly, Commissioner Applewhite, you had asked about condition number 6, the vested rights, 5, excuse me. And what we were trying to do there is that the standard condition that the town asked for there basically says, you agree that when you come in, whatever the law is at the time when you come in will be the law that it applies. And basically you're waiving any vested right, you're waiving any policy choice act. What we were trying to achieve, and we continue to work with staff, all we're trying to achieve is that we don't want to waive any policy choice act. We're not saying that a conditional use zoning necessarily creates a policy choice act right. In fact, in many cases it doesn't. But all we're saying is we don't want to waive our legal rights under the North Carolina law. We're not even sure you could, but that was all we're trying to do, and that's sort of what we're trying to work through with staff. So to the extent that answers your question, we're happy to answer after that, but I'm going to hand it over to Preston so he can give you more details about it. Thank you.
Sorry, Toby's a lot taller than I am. Good evening, planning board members. As Toby mentioned, I do have another plan that's got a little bit more detail than the concept plan here. We've submitted this to DOT, so if it's okay with staff, I'd like to just give you all a copy of it.
If you would also state your name, just so we have it on the recording.
Preston Royster with Thomas & Hutton Engineers.
Thank you.
Hey, can I ask a real quick question? So this is new information that was not included in the agenda packet that was put out to the public. Conrad, is there any way we can get this uploaded as quick as possible after this meeting? As part of this?
So
Unless you think it's not something that would need to be part of the record.
yeah, since this is not part of the concept plan and nor is it intended to be, I would use it as an illustrative and a reflection component rather than as part of your formal agenda packet.
Yeah. And so we'll get into that here in just a second. Okay. So, well, just to give you a high level, it matches the concept plan. It just shows the townhomes and driveway locations and lot locations. So other than that, everything matches the concept plan that was included as part of the application package. So happy to be back. It's been a little while. It's been a long process, but here's where we started, just to give a little bit of background. This is the latest approved overall master plan from 2020, I believe. This was provided to us by staff. Since that time, since 2020, there's been several minor amendments to this plan. And as part of the Phase 3H master plan amendment, I know the conditional zoning and master plan amendment are being thrown around. Conditional zoning was the only process that staff had to modify the master plan, so that's why we went down that path. But this is where we started. Initially, staff asked us to review and put together all the minor amendments so we can consolidate the master plan into a single final document, which is what you see here. So this is what was presented to you, minus the unblank space for Phase 3H back in November. Nothing else has been changed. We just showed the roads here. But this consolidates all the minor amendments from the 2020 master plan, which was the latest version. And it also summarizes all the changes in uses, residential uses, and documents where the open space and active recreation areas were met for the entirety of the project. So after the last planning board meeting, we were asked to include a concept plan, which is what you see here. So this is the concept plan that, the latest concept plan that staff has reviewed. And this was included with the submittal. The exhibit I just handed out to you guys just provides a little bit more clarity on what's going on within those gray boxes where the lots are proposed. So the exhibit shows the units and the driveways and the lot lines in those areas. You can see how things are laid out. see. So, and since we came back, or since we were here in November, we worked with staff at length to put together a concept plan to ensure that the project met the master plan requirements as well as the UDO requirements. We had a little bit of both, so it was a mixed bag. We had to meet some of each. And we feel at this point that there were no additional comments on the plan, so we feel like the concept plan meets both the master plan requirements as well as the UDO requirements in place at this time. With the exception of the 2 deviations, which I'll get back to here in a minute. All right, so there again, going back a little bit, the church was designated on the original master plan back in 2000, roughly 25 years ago. Since that time, there have been multiple churches that have been constructed in close proximity to this site. So given the abundance of churches, as well as the housing shortage that's noted by the NC Chamber of Commerce, this currently, as of February 2025, there's a current shortage, and the 5-year gap, 700,000 plus units. So North Carolina has a shortage of housing, and with the abundance of churches in this area, we feel it's appropriate to convert this over to a residential area in lieu of a church. And as Robert mentioned, the site's located off Winston Road, and I don't need to go back through all of this unless you have questions. But the townhomes are proposed as a transitional use from the neighborhood mixed use to the north, the mobile home park to the east, to transition to the single-family homes to the south and west of the site. So we feel the requested use aligns with the current master plan and the surrounding uses, as well as providing the needed housing. And as Toby mentioned, if we look at the master plan overall, we're well below the 3 units per acre, which is what the low-density residential notes in y'all's future land use plan. So here again, just to give you a little context, I don't need to go over this in great detail because Robert did a great job. All right, so this is from the consolidated master plan, or this is actually the, no, this is from the consolidated master plan we did as part of phase 3H. So a few things to highlight. Phase 3H obviously is 87 residential units on 11 acres. This area has no open space for recreation or active recreation requirement. In total, we are exceeding what was previously proposed as far as the number of residential units, which I'll get back to in a minute. But we are also exceeding, or the project is also exceeding, the open space requirements as well as the active recreation requirements. So as a whole, the master plan, even with this phase, is in alignment with the original approval. All right, so as Toby mentioned, we've got our traffic engineer here so he can speak to this in greater detail. But to give you a broad picture of the traffic impacts here, the original TIA had roughly 1,450 homes proposed or included in the analysis, 150,000 square foot of shopping center, commercial, and a school and a church, which led to about 21,000 daily trips, vehicle trips. The consolidated master plan with all the changes to it, as well as the phase 3H, we result in actually reduction in residential units and the elimination of the commercial space. So the single family went up slightly, but the townhomes is actually proposed to be lower than what was included in the original TIA, and there are no patio homes. And as I mentioned, there's no commercial space. So that actually resulted in a 6,700 trip reduction, daily trip reduction, when the trips were calculated. Okay. And this is there again, Nate can speak to this. This is all of his work and calculations. So, but at the bottom, the big picture takeaway here is that there is a significant reduction in trips from what's proposed today versus what was proposed or included in the original TIA for the overall master plan. And as Robert noted, we are proposing 2 deviations with our conditions. The first is is a deviation from UDO section 6.9.4.J2A, which basically states the single car garages do not count as parking spaces for attached homes. So here we've got single car garages will require 2 parking spaces per unit. Our proposal is for the single car garage to count as 1 space and then 1 space be counted in the drive. Several justifications for this. One, it promotes efficient land use. If we don't count the space in the garage, we have to add additional spaces, which adds additional impervious surface, which has different or other effects, negative effects with regards to stormwater runoff, as well as heat islanding, and eliminate some green space. Including the parking space in the garage is consistent with other adjacent residential other municipalities. Several of the other municipalities in the area include that space in the required parking count. And this is also consistent with phases 7 and 8, which also has townhomes that includes the parking space in the garage as one of the required parking spaces. And lastly, including the space in the garage improves the aesthetics. We're not relying on a large parking lot that may or may not be full to meet this requirement. So with the parking space in the garage, we are meeting the required 2 spaces per unit for each residence. The second deviation is the reduction in the number of guest spaces. And as Robert mentioned, 22 guest spaces are required, which is a quarter guest space per unit. We're proposing 11. Similar to the single car parking requirement, we would adding the additional spaces a lot of times results in spaces that aren't used, and additional impervious surface and elimination of green space, which causes additional environmental impacts. And then market data shows that a lot of times guest parking is lower than the 1-to-4 ratio, which is required by the town. So we feel the reduction is warranted. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have, or we can bring Nate up here to talk about traffic if y'all would like to hear more about that.
Do we have any questions?
I have a question.
All right, go ahead. Yes, sir.
It wasn't brought up, but last time we talked about having red Jasper Way coming directly across the street to the school and talking about realignment of the two.
Right.
Do you have any discussion with the school, and what became of that?
There's been lots of discussions about that. That is, and we've talked to staff at length about that as well. And I believe Kenzie's here, he can speak to it as well. But that is not part of what we're reviewing today as part of the master plan amendment. That's something that has to be resolved and will be resolved, and we're actively discussing that with the school and DOT. But it's not part of what we're discussing this evening.
On the parking situation, it makes sense what you're saying. I'm fine with that. My question is, do the townhomes, will this have sidewalks installed? Are they part of the design? I presume they will be.
Actually, they will not, I don't believe. And the reason being, these are DOT roads. So this is a little bit of actually, let's go back to the master plans.
And I'll continue with my questions of why I'm asking. If they were supposed to be or would be a part of it, the driveway parking spaces, would they be out of the sidewalk area?
Right. So I'll address the second question first. The driveways are outside of the right-of-way, and sidewalks would be inside the right-of-way. Right now, we're not showing sidewalks, which is consistent with the rest of Winston Point. So this would be the only phase that had sidewalks included. And to further complicate this project, these are DOT roads, so they're not, town of Clayton roads. So.
All right. Someone else had a question, Mr. Ray?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. Sure. Is there not a mail kiosk involved in this?
It is. So if we look at the overall master plan, so this phase, so there's a mail kiosk, and you don't mind, I'll go through. In the phase for south of this site, in phase 3. So there we go. So in this area here, in phase 3D or 3C, there is a large mail kiosk for phases 3C to 3G. So we've got approval from USPS. They like to consolidate our kiosks, so they only have to take mail one place. The kiosk for this phase will be included with the kiosks or the mailboxes for those other phases that are adjacent to this.
Okay, great. One other question about the location of the guest parking spots.
Yes, ma'am.
The benefit of that, especially if there are no sidewalks or greenways leading off, would seem to accrue mostly to the people who live right in this area. I mean, how do you square that with this is supposed to serve the whole townhome community?
Right, and that is a very valid question. And that is something that we will be working with staff and the NCDOT on as we go further along in the technical review and finalized in the design. I agree with you. Well, we can't really have folks walking in the roads, right? So that's something that we'll be discussing further as we are discussing more as we move through this. But it'll be a conversation with the town as well as NCDOT.
Mr. Saraski, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a few questions. I want to go back to the sidewalk real quick. Sure. Are you not including the sidewalk because of impervious surface calculations or just because these are DOT roads?
No, we're not limited to impervious here. If you look at the overall master plan, we can add some impervious to this. Our preliminary calculations don't include it, but that doesn't mean we can't increase. We got room to increase size. So that's not so stormwater is not driving that decision. It's primarily the NCDOT roads as well as this being the only phase that would have sidewalks. So those are the two things. And that's the reason we haven't shown it on the concept plan here. But there again, we're early in the design process.
As someone who lived in the ETJ on DOT roads, I would kill for a sidewalk. So just because it hasn't been done before is an extremely poor reason to not do it here.
Sure.
So just because it's done before doesn't mean it's the right thing.
Sure.
So I would advise you to put some sidewalks in here.
No. Yes, sir.
I would kill for sidewalks in my neighborhood.
Totally understood.
So I don't see and you may be early in the design on this, but I don't see where the dam is on the stormwater pond.
Right, so the grading is not shown here. So the dam is going to be on the low side here.
Okay.
So we have actually submitted this to NCDOT to get their initial comments, and part of those comments were from their hydraulics unit. And so far, the only comments they had were to ensure that the downstream drainage is not overwhelmed, which is part of good engineering practice anyway, right? So the entire site drains to this location. There's a culvert under Red Jasper Way, and I don't think it's shown here, but it's somewhere right in this area. And then it drains down between two lots and then drains down into the stream buffer in the floodplain. So the embankment will be on this side. We'll design the pond to ensure that there's no adverse impacts to the properties downstream or the road.
And access to it, make sure there's access to the dam.
Correct. Yes, sir. We have to provide maintenance access to meet town requirements, but it'll be fairly straightforward there. Again, we can come off the parking lot or we can come off the road here. The grades in this area aren't too steep, so it's not a big grade change we have to navigate, so maintenance access will not be a problem.
Will that be maintained by the HOA in this area or the overall master plan HOA?
That is a good question, and I don't think we've got to the legalities of that just yet. I would just imagine it'd be the entire HOA, but that's early in the...
I just want to make sure that these people understand that if they have a problem with it, they got to call DOT and not the town.
Yes.
Because they will have a problem with it at some point.
Right.
And they will complain to the town about it. So just, Conrad, make sure you remember that because you're going to get complaints. The townhomes themselves, are these individual lots?
Yes, sir.
So the townhomes on individual lots, so it's not a condo, right? It's an actual lot.
There'll be
purchase.
fee simple platted lots, individual platted lots.
Okay. You mentioned active recreation.
Right.
Where is the active recreation?
So there is no required in this phase. So if we look at the overall master plan, there's a clubhouse, pool, amenity center here, which is kind of to the southwest. There is this active recreation space, which is included as part of phases 5A and 5B. I don't recall where the other ones are because we didn't work on the other phases, but if we go to,
People will have to drive to the active recreation, is what you're saying?
Correct. And that's consistent with the other phases. So if we look here, the active recreation space, there's some in phase 1, phase 3, 3B, 3D, and E, which are just to the south of this, and then phases 5A and 5B, which I just mentioned. So those 3D to 3G spaces are located down in this area. It's just south, probably that area and that area.
this is going to be another place where I would advise you to have some sort of active recreation that people can walk to. If you have townhomes, it's new families having a hard time affording homes right now, and they're probably going to buy these, and they're going to look for active recreation areas that they can walk to. Whether you have sidewalks or not, they're going to walk to them. So I would advise you and your client to look at putting some sort of active recreation on the site, even if it's a small playground or something like that, that people can use within the neighborhood rather than have to drive somewhere. Kind of defeats the purpose of active recreation. So I'm kind of on the fence of whether you can actually use that term, understanding it's in the entire neighborhood, but for these folks that are going to be insulated in here, they're not going to have active recreation. Right. So I would just, if you could, include some active recreation in there.
Noted.
I'm a little worried about, you show a full landscape buffer, but then where the cul-de-sac is, you show a lesser landscape buffer?
Correct. So it's a 30-foot required buffer. The UDO allows us to go down to 20 feet here with a fence. So the fence is proposed there where the right-of-way extends just into that 30-foot buffer.
Okay, so the whole thing is 30 because there's a note in here that says 20.
I'm sorry.
Right above where it says limits of disturbance on the plan, it says 20-foot landscape buffer. Is that supposed to be 30?
1 second. Got on my glasses, but my eyes aren't quite there.
You're fine. I had to look at it far away from me, so.
So, yes, sir. So this is a 30-foot type C, I believe, 30 is 20 feet right there where the fence is proposed. So the fence allows, and that's according to UDO, allows us to reduce the buffer down to 20 feet there, but maintain the same opacity. So that's why it's just that short section.
If this was a town, what would the cross section of this road be? What would the typical section be? How would it differ from the NCDOT typical section?
Looking at the MSSD, typical cross section would be curb and gutter. So there'd be a sidewalk with that utility strip, that kind of verge, and then the curb and gutter on both sides.
And what would the width of the pavement be?
See, I'm looking, let me see if I can.
You're fine. It's 22 here. I'd imagine it's probably going to be something close.
Yeah, this is 27 foot back to back, which is pretty DOT standard, which is pretty typical what municipalities require, or what we see.
That was actually going to be my question, because
I'm sorry, I'm asking so many questions. Dave.
No. The minimum NCDOT berm width is 4 feet, not 3'6".
Do what? I'm sorry.
The minimum DOT berm width is 4 feet, not 3'6".
Right, and the intent here is for the berm to actually go all the way to the right of way. This is just a section that was pulled from the subdivision manual. So obviously with the townhomes and the driveways, the berm will be wider. It'll go all the way to the right of way. So the intent is for it to be a natural cross section, 2% up from the back of the curb to the right of way to allow for reasonable driveway slopes and then up to the units. So noted that there may be a discrepancy between the
It would be
subdivision manual.
Kinsey, the assistant engineering director, let me know that's 29 feet back to curb to back to curb.
So this is a smaller footprint than it would be if it was in the town.
This is going to be a more narrow.
Yeah.
That's what the cross section is.
So when we talk about the requirements that this development needs to follow, we're talking about outside the public right of way, not inside the public right of way, correct? So do we need to change that condition? Do we need to change that condition? I probably should ask the chair as well.
It's going to be based on what you guys recommend. You can, when you make a motion, you can make any recommendation you like, and we'll vote on whatever if you make the motion, or whoever does.
I would advise us to add, Conrad, I would advise us to add that to the condition, that the town's conditions are outside the right of way. Because this is not giving us the same as if this was in the town.
So
It's not giving us the same.
the right of way is 55 foot for a town residential street.
Right. And this is 50.
This is 50.
That's what I'm saying.
Correct.
I'm saying this is giving us, if this was in the town, if this was not in the county, if it was not in the ETJ, if this was in the town, we would be asking for a more stringent not more stringent, I think it's actually a better cross section than this one is, but they're abiding by NCDOT because they're NCDOT right away.
We would be applying the town's street standard.
Right.
It is. Correct.
But the one condition we have, doesn't it say that we're applying town's policies and standards to this project, but we're not doing that within the right of way, correct?
Correct.
So do we need to add that to the condition?
To clarify that it'd be NCDOT standards. as long as the applicants are okay with that clarification, we can propose that.
And I don't want to propose it unless everyone here is in agreement with that as well. I just want to make sure, because it's, when I want to be clear when we're talking about town policies and standards here. So it's just a clarification. Again, I don't want someone to come back 2 years from now and say that you're not following the town cross section, because that's what it said in that condition, but they're in the DOT right away. I want to be clear right now, they are doing that because they are in the NCDOT right away. I also don't want someone to come back and blame the town for this, for the issues they're going to have on these roads, because they're going to have issues on these roads with the way they're being constructed. I have one more question, Daniel, sorry. I have one more question. It's related to traffic. I'm sorry, Nate, you knew I wasn't going to leave you alone. I see what you're saying about it being less. So I have two questions. One is the total numbers that was in the original TIA, that 1931 for peak hour, did that include internal capture, or was that just gross trips?
If you would, before answering, state your name and what you do, so we have it in the record.
Good evening. My name is Nate Boquin, traffic engineering lead with McAdams. So those trips that we quoted were the gross trips.
Gross trips.
So after we had taken out those reductions, I don't recall them actually using an internal capture. I think they just used pass by in those calculations.
Okay. Here's my quandary. I don't have a problem with this plan. Okay, I think townhomes is probably a great use here. I have a problem with the aspects of the plan and the master plan that have already been done that I can't help right now. So that's part of my issue. Part of it is when I see, we talked a lot in the transportation plan about village concepts, okay? And keeping people within neighborhoods. This neighborhood does not keep people in a neighborhood, okay? And this townhome community does not keep people in the townhomes. They have to drive to get anywhere. They have to drive to get to active recreation. And when I see 150,000 square foot shopping center, that was probably a good amount of that. How much of that 1931 was the shopping center? Do you know? It was probably a good amount, I would imagine.
It was a large piece.
It was a large piece of it. And it's not included on this, which means people are going to have to drive to go to a shopping center when they could have stayed in the neighborhood instead of having to put themselves out in everywhere in the town and everywhere in ETJ. They could have stayed there. That's the quandary I'm having right now with what we're looking at, is you have to drive to get anywhere. The goal of the transportation plan that the town just put together is you don't have to drive to get everywhere. So I wanted to point that out to all of you just so you understand the reason we did some of the things in the transportation plan and that was approved by this board was to keep people in where you live. Live, work, play, right? That's what we talk about. This is a live. There's no work or play here. And there's no retail or going anywhere. So if there was a shopping center across the street or something else and people would stay there, then I'd be more apt to say this is a no-brainer. But I have an issue with that not being there. I just hate the fact that you have to drive to do everything from here. All right, I'm done.
Any other questions?
I was going to say with regards to that was a minor amendment that happened before.
And that's part of what I'm saying is that's my quandary, not yours. That's mine, that I would have wished I was around when the master plan was approved, and I wasn't. So.
Okay, have a question this end?
Yeah, I have a question for traffic, and maybe you, Mike, as well, and Derek probably would have asked this as well, but since we had this issue come up in Riverwood a couple of months ago with the traffic safety, with there being a school directly across the street, does the realignment of Jasper Road and that being a condition that has to be done with the school warrant at least at a minimum of a crosswalk for reconstruction, or at least a ped safety signal? I mean, I imagine it wouldn't warrant like a full-on signal at the intersection by any means, but just from a safety perspective for kids crossing the road.
So the school's driveway was just recently constructed. When their driveway was constructed, we already had approved drawings. So those were already available within CDOT. I would assume that was taken into account when that school was going through, understanding there was some larger development happening in the area. Whether or not they're triggering the need for crossing, it's a tricky situation when you get to school improvements. NCDOT did not require that of the school when they were moving forward. So I don't feel like that is reflective of our impacts either, especially since Red Jasper is already in place there. I don't know if I understood the full question, if that answers.
You want me to, because I thought about this too. I was thinking about asking this question also for a crosswalk, but there's two major differences here between this and Riverwood. One is that's a private school across the street. Most people are probably driving there. They drove to the old one, they drove to the new one. I'm glad they built it close to the old one. Second thing is you have a 45-mile-an-hour road. You'll need a wrapping flashing beacon there. It'll be required. So, and I don't think that these folks should have to put it in because they're just happen to build across the street from the school. So it's a little bit of a different situation. I hate it too because they're gonna have to drive to the school. If they have their kids there, they're gonna have to get in the car and drive across the street to the school, which I hate, but.
I kind of figured that was the case. Since DOT was the one, at least in the conditions from what I remember back then, it sounded like they were going to pay for it just as long as y'all design it or however that goes. And I understand that with the way signals are, that's a minimum of like $150,000 install. So not that I'm trying to push that cost on y'all, but I just wanted to at least know if that discussion was taking place because people that are going to move there are probably going to wonder all the same questions.
Yeah, and when looking at the school site as well, since they don't have sidewalk facilities connecting to the road, again, just from a big picture safety perspective, it's difficult with providing that full connection to them since they kind of aren't set up for that.
I don't even think NCDOT has a school zone on Winston Road in this area. If that gives you an indication of how they feel about this.
Are there any other questions of the applicant?
I'll just ask two brief questions. Has Red Jasper been turned over to DOT already? Okay. And so that's why the realignment is a little bit of everybody's burden to bear here. It may not be, the subject of tonight's discussion, but I do think it's incredibly important that it get addressed sooner rather than later. When this gets built out, I just imagine there will be cars going opposite directions and it just makes for a dangerous intersection. And that is something that we need to be concerned about, regardless if it's, the utmost priority within this plan. So I just want to say that. And then two, I think at the last meeting, there were several concerns about other DOT roads, not necessarily related to the project or connected to Jasper or Red Jasper Way. Were there any follow-up discussions with DOT and the other property owners?
Yes, sir. Since that time, the previous developer and NCDOT are working to get roads accepted. As they're completed, the documentation is completed and densities are hit.
Okay.
So there's a lot of maintenance going on out there right now in order to move that process along.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions of the applicant this evening? Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
This is a public meeting, and members of the public who wish to be heard on this or any other matter can come forward tonight. Is there anyone from the public who would like to make a statement or ask a question? All right, hearing none, seeing none, I'll close that portion of the meeting, and I will turn this over to the board for a motion. What's your pleasure?
I'm not going to make the motion, but I'm going to suggest that we add a couple conditions.
You want someone to make the motion, you're going to add the conditions.
Yeah, or I can make the motion, I don't care.
What are the conditions?
Well, that's why I wanted to talk through the conditions first and kind of get the feel of the board before we move forward with motion. One is I think there should be an active recreation site on this, an active recreation area somewhere on this property. That's number one.
It's a small recreation area. It's not very big.
If you would talk into the microphone so we have a record of it, please, Ms.
Yeah, there is, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, there is a very small recreation area with a couple of swings down below the townhomes, where the townhomes are planned on Red Jasper Way. Just FYI. It's not very big.
Understood.
I have to agree with Mike, what you're saying. in my mind, surely there's some space on this site where at least some amount of active recreation. I agree with you. Yes, overall, the site does have active recreation, but there's no sidewalk infrastructure for anybody to safely get there. And they have to either walk or they have to drive. I'm in agreement with Mike about the active recreation. I think surely we can find, the applicant can find a small spot on the site for, even if it's a small tot lot or swings or gazebo, something that could keep people there on site instead of having to wander the development in search of active recreation.
Is the applicant willing to find property on, a place on here to do some type of recreation, albeit limited probably, but?
I'm even shorter than Preston. Yes, sir, we are. We can find room for active. Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other conditions you have?
Number 2.
You making notes of this? All right.
I would love to see sidewalks on here, even if it's only on one side. I know that's again, that's a personal opinion. I think I think the people that are going to probably buy these are going to use them in full force. And I see people walk the wrong way. There is actually a way you're supposed to walk down a street without sidewalks. You're supposed to walk on the left side and not the right side because you have to make eye contact with drivers. In my neighborhood, I see people walking on the right side of the road all the time and they have no clue a car is coming behind them. It's dangerous, not just because of the sidewalks aren't there and because people aren't educated. So I would like to see sidewalks in this, at least on one side. I'm not asking for both sides. I think I would like to see it at least on one side.
Is the applicant willing to put sidewalks in?
Also, my name is Patty Harold Hilburn with D.R. Horton. I forgot to mention that.
Thank you. I forgot to ask you.
We're going to have to look at the plan to just see, if we can fit, what we can fit in there. And if it has to be outside of the right of way, do we need public easements and that sort of thing? So if we can fit it in there, I think one side would be fine, but we'll need to go back and look at it. I can't say right now.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else before a motion is made? Keep in mind that regardless of what our motion is tonight, our motion will be a recommendation either to approve or not approve. And there may be conditions that we add to that is our recommendation to the town council. They will be the final arbiter of that decision. And there will be time, I would assume, between now and the time that you come before the town council to discuss that further and to give it further thought. Do I have a motion this evening?
I'll make a motion.
Have a motion? Go right ahead. Mr.
I'll make
Applewhite.
a motion to recommend approval of this conditional rezoning and conditions of the approval based on inconsistency with the adopted 2045 comprehensive growth plan, in that the subject site is designated on the future land use map as low residential, which envisions a maximum density of 3 units per acre. Phase 3H proposes 7.4 units per acre. This action is reasonable and in the public interest, in that the request is compatible with surrounding land uses, and the request is consistent with Goal LU3, encourages a range of housing types and lot sizes that will meet the needs of various income levels, family sizes, and ages. Strategy LU 3.1.3 within larger developments encourages higher density housing types to be located in those areas with closest proximity to services, amenities, and infrastructure. If approved, the future land use map designation of the property will be updated to high-density residential, which envisions up to 10 units per acre and a potential for single-family attached residential unit types. And we will also add the conditions to be recommended for active recreation on the site and sidewalks on one side within the capabilities of the plan and the site.
We have a motion to accept along with some added conditions. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Recommendation carries. Thank you. Ms. Bland, you can rejoin us, please. That'll do it. All right, item 6 on the agenda this evening, is there any new business?
Yeah, Chair Dupree, new business is going to be a reminder, if you are interested in signing up for the UNC School of Government course, please contact Sonia Davis, or contact myself, or reach out and I can connect you. That's a great course, give an intro to the planning board legislative process, great for our new members as well as any of the veterans on the board, just to get some of the current, latest, greatest thought on the role of the planning board. So that's all my.
I believe there's a class in late April and one middle of May. 14th of May, something like that.
Yes, there's one on April 30th online, and there's one on May 14th online.
Right.
As well.
Okay. Any other new business coming?
No other new business.
All right.
Thank you.
Item 7, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.